You wake up, 14 years old. A eunuch is at the door. Your parents are silent. The neighbors won't meet your eyes. In 15 minutes, your life ends. Not by death, by selection. Beijing, 1421. The Forbidden City has just opened. 720,000 square meters of lacquered power. And inside, the Yongle Emperor needs women, not wants, needs. This is the Xiunu system, the elegant female selection, and under Ming Dynasty law, no household is exempt, not the wealthy, not the poor, not your family. If you are between 14 and 16, unmarried, and without certified physical disability, you go to the gate, the Shenmu Gate, the martial spirit gate, where eunuchs inspect bodies for skin infections, unwanted body hair, body odor, where they check if you walk correctly, speak correctly, gesture correctly, where fewer than 100 out of thousands make it through, and the ones who do, they enter a palace they can never leave. The selection begins in the provinces. Eunuchs leave Beijing. They carry imperial edicts. They visit every village, every town, every household. The Board of Revenue sends notices to local officials. Clan heads receive orders, submit lists. Every available female, age 14 to 16, the lists go to commanders through headquarters in Beijing. The lists go to the Board of Revenue. A date is set, selection day. Families try everything. They paint medicine on daughters' faces to create scars. They scratch skin. They force girls to become priests. They marry infants to older men to claim exemption. During the reign of King Taejong of Joseon, Korea in the early 1400s, the penalty for hiding a virgin daughter, for applying medicine to disfigure her, for cutting her hair, for attempting escape, was severe. Punishment fell on the entire family, because this was not just about China. The Yongle Emperor, born Judi on May 2nd, 1360, wanted women from everywhere. Korea sent 114 women as tribute to the Ming Dynasty during Yongle's reign. 16 of them were virgin girls, accompanied by 48 female servants. The rest were cooks and performers. These women came from Joseon, from families that had no choice. The Ming demanded them. Korea complied. One of those girls was Lady Han, born 1398, chosen because of her outstanding beauty. She became consort to Kang Hui's Rongshuli. She entered the Forbidden City at 14. She would never see Korea again. Another was Lady Kui, brought from Korea at 14, daughter of a government official. She did not know that by surviving, she would witness the worst massacre in Forbidden City history. And she did not know that her survival would be temporary. These women entered through the west gate or the eastern gate of the palace. Once inside, they broke off all contact with friends and family. Their job was singular: provide the emperor with sexual pleasures, provide him with a male heir. Only on rare occasions did a concubine leave imperial service. If she was given as a gift to another country, if she reached age 25, under rules set by Emperor Yongle, a concubine could leave after 5 years of service. But this rule was not enforced. Most women who entered the Forbidden City died there. If you value documented history and factual research like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched using sources including the South China Morning Post's Forbidden City Historical Archives, published in their 2017 multimedia investigation, Wikipedia's extensively cited entries on the Imperial Chinese harem system updated through July 2025 with over 30 academic sources, and the Ming Tombs official historical documentation from mingtombs.eu, which draws directly from Chinese dynastic records and archaeological findings. Now back to the information. The selection process had stages. First stage, body inspection. Candidates stood in lines at the gate. Eunuchs walked down the rows. They looked for problems. Skin infections disqualified you. Body odor disqualified you. Unwanted body hair disqualified you. Any physical deformity disqualified you. The inspection was thorough. The inspection was humiliating. Second stage, behavior training. Fewer than 100 candidates selected from thousands spent several nights with women who specialized in training maids. These trainers taught acceptable behavior. How to speak without raising your voice. How to gesture without appearing bold. How to walk without making sound. The finalists learned arts: painting, reading, writing, chess, dancing. Third stage, the Empress Mother's Test. Standout candidates spent several days serving as the Emperor's mother's maids. They took care of her daily needs. They underwent inspections while sleeping beside her. The inspectors watched for bad nocturnal habits: snoring, emitting odors, talking in sleep, walking in sleep. Any of these habits disqualified you. Final stage, meeting the Emperor. Only a few women who survived all 3 stages would be noticed by the Emperor. Most would spend their entire lives in the palace without any contact with him. Bitter loneliness, politics, jealousy. This was life in the harem, and the Yongle Emperor's harem was vast. Historians estimate hundreds of concubines during his reign. Some sources claim up to 1,000. The exact number is unknown because many records were destroyed. But we know this. In 1424, when the Yongle Emperor died, between 16 and 30 concubines were required to die with him. The practice was called sunzang, funeral sacrifice, human sacrifice. It was borrowed from the previous Mongolian Yuan dynasty that ruled China from 1279 to 1368. The Yongle Emperor adopted many Yuan customs. This was one. After an honorary feast, the chosen concubines stood on wooden beds. Ropes were placed around their necks. The beds were pulled away. Hanging. They were buried in eastern and western wells on either side of the Changling tomb. Today, there is no trace of these burial sites. The earth has swallowed them. The Yongle Emperor himself came to power through violence. His father was the Hongwu Emperor, founder of the Ming dynasty. Hongwu had 26 sons. The carefully groomed heir, his first son, Zhu Biao, died prematurely in 1392. Instead of choosing his own second eldest son, Hongwu decided on the eldest son of Zhu Biao. This followed the principle of primogeniture. The eldest son of the empress would inherit, or his eldest son. When Hongwu died in 1398, he was succeeded by Zhu Yunwen. Zhu Yunwen took the reign name Jianwen Emperor. He was Yongle's nephew, and Yongle did not accept this. Yongle was the prince of Yan. He commanded the northern frontier army. He had won victories against the Mongols. He had ambitions. He had power, and he was prepared to press his claim by force. 1399. The Jianwen Emperor attempted to curtail his uncle's power. He arrested many of Zhu Di's associates. Zhu Di plotted rebellion. He launched a civil war, the Jingnan Campaign, the campaign to clear away disorders. 3 years of intense fighting. The central government in Nanjing underestimated the Prince of Yan's strength, failed to muster manpower effectively, failed to use resources properly. The war became a stalemate. Early 1402, the prince's forces broke through imperial armies in the north, sped almost unopposed southward along the Grand Canal, accepted surrender of the imperial fleet on the Yangtze River, were admitted into the walled capital by court defectors in July 1402. 4 days after the fall of Nanjing, the Prince of Yan took the throne himself. He did not formally begin his rule until 1403. He took the reign name Yongle, perpetual happiness. The Jianwen Emperor disappeared. Whether he died in a palace fire, as officially announced, or escaped in disguise to live as a recluse is unknown. The puzzle troubled Zhu Di until his death, and it has been debated by historians ever since. Just as ruthless as his father had been in eliminating dissent, Yongle started with a clean sweep. Any official he thought loyal to his nephew Jianwen was removed. In one infamous purge begun right after the new emperor took office, the noted Confucian scholar official Fang Xiaoru was executed. Fang had refused to draft the proclamation of Yongle's enthronement. The method of execution was dismemberment. This set the tone. This emperor did not tolerate opposition. This emperor did not forgive. This emperor demanded absolute obedience, and he extended that demand to every aspect of his realm, including women. The Forbidden City. Construction began in 1406, under Yongle's orders, completed 14 years later in 1420. Official inauguration held in February 1421. The site was chosen carefully. It had been the capital location during the previous Yuan dynasty, a couple of kilometers north of earlier capital sites in Beijing. At its height, more than 200,000 workers were deployed. Artisans, laborers, craftsmen. The West Palace and outer city walls were completed in May 1417. Yongle moved his court to the new capital at that time. The main palace became known as the Forbidden City, Gugong in Chinese. It was called Purple Forbidden City initially. Purple stood for the heavenly North Star. The city was forbidden because ordinary people were not allowed to enter, and once inside, you were not allowed to leave. The emperor was said to be a son of heaven. He held heaven's supreme power. The Forbidden City was his earthly realm. Protected by a 10-meter-high circuit wall measuring 15 kilometers in total length, accessed by 9 gates, laid out on a regular grid plan, Beijing's need for food was massive. The Grand Canal was deepened and widened so grain ships could easily reach the capital. Inside this architectural marvel, the selection system fed a constant supply of women. The emperor needed heirs, male heirs specifically. The Ming dynasty followed strict succession rules. The heir to the throne was always the eldest son of the emperor and empress, or his heir, followed by younger sons of the empress. Sons of concubines were excluded from the line of succession. Conservative officials strongly insisted on following this rule throughout the Ming era. This meant the empress held immense importance, but concubines still served crucial functions. They provided backup options if the empress failed to produce sons. They demonstrated the emperor's virility. They displayed his wealth and power, and they satisfied his desires. With hundreds or thousands of women available, the emperor could indulge any preference, any whim, any fantasy. But this system created problems. Jealousy among concubines was inevitable. Competition for the emperor's attention was fierce. Women who bore sons gained status. Women who bore daughters received less favor. Women who remained barren faced neglect. And neglect in the Forbidden City meant isolation, decades of loneliness, no contact with family, no hope of marriage, no children of your own, just waiting, aging, forgotten. Some women went years without seeing the emperor. Some went their entire lives. They lived in separate quarters. They filled their days with routine, applying makeup, practicing arts, socializing with other concubines, but always under surveillance, always monitored by eunuchs, always subject to rules. Rules about dress, rules about speech, rules about movement, rules about everything. The eunuchs who controlled access to these women had their own complicated histories. Most came from poor families. Some volunteered for castration to escape poverty, to gain employment in the imperial service, to have a chance at advancement. Castration was both a traditional punishment and a means of gaining position. Under the Ming dynasty, self-castration was common. Although it was not always performed completely, this led to it being made illegal, but the practice continued. Boys as young as 8 or 9 were castrated. Some by parental decision. Families would receive cash rewards for donating their sons. They hoped their children would have more comfortable lives in the palace, more prosperous futures. About 1/8 of eunuchs were young children bowing to parental pressure. The others were adults. Men with no economic means to lead honest lives. They preferred emasculation to begging and stealing. The castration process itself was brutal. A knife, a spigot, sometimes chili sauce to seal the wound. The procedure was done quickly, without anesthesia. The boy or man would be held down. The genitals removed, the wound cauterized. Survival was not guaranteed. Many died from blood loss. Many died from infection. Those who survived faced a long recovery. Weeks of pain, difficulty urinating, risk of complications. But those who made it through gained entry to the palace. They started at the bottom, performing menial tasks, cleaning, carrying, serving. With time and skill, they could advance, gain positions of authority, control information, influence decisions, accumulate wealth. The most powerful eunuchs rivaled ministers in authority. They had direct access to the emperor. They controlled the imperial household. They managed vast bureaucracies. And under Yongle, their power grew dramatically. If you value factual historical investigation like this that uncovers uncomfortable truths about the past, make sure to subscribe. It directly supports our research and our ability to bring you documented history. Also, drop a comment about which city you're watching from. Now back to the selection days. The women selected during these processes came from across the empire, from wealthy families, from common families, from military families. Social background was no barrier during the Ming dynasty. The empress was the one exception. She was always selected from the family of a high-ranking official, but concubines could come from anywhere. This created strange dynamics. A farmer's daughter could become an imperial concubine, gaining wealth beyond imagination, living in luxury, wearing silk robes, eating fine food, being attended by servants, but she could never leave, never see her parents again, never marry, never have a normal life. She traded freedom for comfort, and that trade was not voluntary. When the eunuchs came to your village, when they added your name to the list, when they summoned you to Beijing, you went. Refusal meant punishment for your entire family. Exile, imprisonment, execution. The Ming dynasty did not tolerate disobedience. The journey to Beijing could take weeks or months depending on your starting location. Girls traveled in groups, escorted by eunuchs and officials. They were kept separate from the general population, protected, guarded, monitored. They were valuable cargo, property of the emperor. Any damage to them would be punished. When they arrived in Beijing, they were brought to the palace, the Shenwu Gate, the Martial Spirit Gate, located at the northern end of the Forbidden City. This was where inspections happened, where selections were made, where fates were decided. The girls lined up, hundreds of them, sometimes thousands. They wore their best clothes. They tried to look beautiful. They tried to look healthy. They tried to look perfect, because perfection was the only path to survival. The eunuchs conducting inspections had specific criteria. Skin had to be clear, no infections, no scars, no blemishes. Hair had to be thick and lustrous. Teeth had to be white and straight. Body odor had to be pleasant or non-existent. Height had to be appropriate, not too tall, not too short. Weight had to be appropriate, not too heavy, not too thin. Proportions had to be balanced. Face had to be symmetrical. Eyes had to be bright, voice had to be melodious, hands had to be delicate, feet had to be small. For those from families that practiced foot binding, the feet had to be perfectly bound, 3 inches or less. The inspection was invasive, the inspection was degrading, but the inspection was mandatory. Refusal meant immediate disqualification. Disqualification meant shame for your family. So you stood, you endured, you submitted. Those who passed the first inspection moved to the second stage, behavior training. This lasted several nights. The trainers were older women, former palace servants, women who understood the rules, women who could teach proper conduct. They taught the candidates how to speak, soft voice, measured tone, no excitement, no anger, no emotion. They taught how to walk, small steps, no noise, gliding motion, grace in every movement. They taught how to gesture, minimal hand movement, no pointing, no expansive motions, everything contained, everything controlled, everything submissive. They taught arts, painting landscapes, writing poetry, playing chess, dancing traditional forms. These skills would be tested. These skills would be judged. These skills could mean the difference between selection and rejection. The third stage was the most difficult. Serving the Empress Mother, the Dowager Empress, the Emperor's mother. She had her own quarters in the Forbidden City. She had her own servants. But during selection periods, the finalists served her. They attended her meals. They dressed her. They accompanied her on walks. They performed tasks she demanded. And they were watched constantly, not just during the day, but at night too. They slept in her chambers, on mats on the floor, near her bed. And inspectors observed, watching for snoring, watching for restlessness, watching for talking in sleep, watching for sleepwalking. Any of these conditions suggested health problems, suggested poor character, suggested unsuitability. The candidates knew they were being watched. Some couldn't sleep at all. Anxiety kept them awake. Fear paralyzed them. But staying awake too long also suggested problems, suggested nervousness, suggested weakness. It was an impossible test, designed to eliminate all but the most exceptional, the most controlled, the most perfect. Those who survived all 3 stages met the Emperor. Or rather, they were presented to the Emperor. He did not interview them. He did not speak with them extensively. He looked at them. He assessed them. He made decisions. Some women caught his eye immediately. Beauty, presence, something indefinable. These women became favorites. They received attention. They received gifts. They received status. Other women were selected but never noticed. They became part of the harem, living in the palace, serving in various capacities, but never intimate with the Emperor, never bearing children, never gaining prominence. Just existing, in gilded captivity, for years, for decades, until death. The Yongle Emperor died on August 12th, 1424. He was 64 years old. He died while returning from his 5th military campaign against the Mongols in the Gobi Desert. The campaign had been unsuccessful. The Mongols refused to engage in direct battle. They used mobility against Ming numbers. They used terrain against Ming supplies. The emperor spent enormous amounts equipping his armies, hundreds of thousands of troops, thousands of horses, tons of supplies, but the campaigns achieved nothing. The Mongols remained a threat. The northern border remained insecure, and the emperor died frustrated, exhausted, defeated. His body was brought back to Beijing. His tomb, Changling, had been under construction since 1411. The underground chambers were complete. The above-ground structures were finished in 1418. He was buried with Empress Shu, who had died in 1407 at age 46, 17 years earlier. Her body had been waiting in the tomb. Now her husband joined her. And so did his concubines, 16 women, according to most sources. Some sources say 30. These women had no choice. The emperor's will demanded it. His son, the Hongxi emperor, enforced it. Lady Kuei was among those selected to die, but she was one of the favorites. She had survived 16 years in the palace. She had outlived the emperor, and that was considered fortunate. She made herself beautiful on that day. She dressed carefully. She arranged her hair. She went to the ceremony with 15 other favorite concubines. They were taken to a hall in the Forbidden City. A feast was held, honorary, final. The women ate, drank, waited. Then they were led to wooden beds, small platforms. Ropes were already prepared, white silk nooses, the highest quality silk. Because even in death, imperial concubines deserved luxury. The women stood on the beds, the nooses were placed around their necks, and then the beds were pulled away, hanging, quick for some, slow for others. The bodies were left for a time, to ensure death. Then they were prepared for burial. Dressed in fine robes, placed in coffins, transported to Changling, buried in eastern and western wells, on either side of the main tomb, In the ground, forever. But Lady Kui's fate connects to something that happened 3 years before Yongle died, 1421. New Year's Day. The Forbidden City was officially unveiled. Foreign dignitaries visited Beijing. The emperor wanted to impress them, show Ming power, Ming prosperity, Ming superiority. He hosted banquets, ceremonies, demonstrations of wealth. But inside the palace walls, rumors spread, whispers, accusations. One of the emperor's favorite concubines had committed suicide. The concubine's name is not recorded in official documents, but the reason given in unofficial accounts is specific. She had an affair with a palace eunuch. Why? Some versions claim the emperor was impotent. Unable to perform sexually, the concubine sought satisfaction elsewhere. Found it with a eunuch, was discovered, and rather than face punishment, she killed herself. This story humiliated the emperor, made him appear weak, made him appear unable to control his household, made him appear unable to satisfy his women. By the late Ming period, nearly 80% of eunuchs came from North China, mainly the Beijing area. They came from a few counties around Beijing, like Hejian. These castrated men controlled access to the emperor. They controlled which concubines were summoned. They controlled information flow. They controlled the selection process itself. And under Emperor Yongle, their power grew. One eunuch named Gang Bing castrated himself to demonstrate loyalty to Yongle. He became the patron saint of eunuchs in China. Another, Zheng He, became the famous admiral who led 7 voyages to the Indian Ocean between 1405 and 1433. Zheng He commanded fleets of over 300 ships, more than 60 treasure ships. Over 30,000 men, he reached the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, East Africa. He brought back envoys bearing tribute. He brought back exotic animals, giraffes, lions, all to glorify the Yongle Emperor. The selection system fed this machine. Every 3 years, new women entered. Fresh candidates, young girls who had passed inspection. The eunuchs managed them, assigned them quarters, monitored their activities, reported to the emperor, controlled their contact with the outside world, and when the emperor died, the eunuchs organized the funeral. They arranged the zunzang ceremony. They selected which concubines would die. They supervised the execution. This was the system that Lady Kui lived through. After the 1421 massacre, she returned to Beijing. She survived 3 more years. She watched as the emperor aged. She watched as he launched 5 military campaigns against the Mongols. In 1421, Minister of Revenues Xia Yuanji, Minister of Justice Wu Zhong, and Minister of War Fang Bin protested. The campaigns were draining the treasury. The campaigns were failing. The emperor ignored the protests. Fang Bin committed suicide. Wu Zhong and Xia Yuanji were imprisoned. The campaigns continued. The emperor died on the 5th campaign, and the concubines who survived the 1421 massacre faced selection for burial. Lady Kui made herself beautiful on the day of Yongle's funeral. She dressed in her finest robes, she arranged her hair, she went to the ceremony, along with 15 other favorite concubines and their servant girls. They were taken to a hall in the Forbidden City. White silk nooses waited. The women were executed, hung. Their bodies were prepared for burial. Lady Kui was 30 years old. She had spent half her life in the palace. She had survived the emperor, but the marriage vows bound her. She could never remarry. She could never give herself to another man. The historical record is unclear about her final choice, but the result is certain. Lady Kui died with the emperor she had served since age 14. The fear that selection days created spread beyond China. Korea felt it directly. Between 1402 and 1424, Joseon sent tribute missions regularly. The Ming government demanded women. King Taizong of Joseon had to comply. In the 8th year of his reign, 30 virgins were selected. The Chinese envoy tried to punish Korean officials. He claimed there were no beautiful women. Taizong declared punishment for those who hid virgins, for those who applied acupuncture, for those who cut hair or applied medicine, for those who tried to escape selection. King Sejong, who reigned from 1418 to 1450, said it plainly. Because it is related not only to domestic interests, but also to foreign countries. We only comply with the Chinese emperor's ordinance. No choice. Submission. Korea stopped sending human tribute after 1435, but the damage was done. The women who were sent could sometimes return home. They were called huanhyangyo. Returning women. They received contempt. They received discrimination. Their families rejected them. Society viewed them as defiled. Many hanged themselves. Their corpses littered the streets. The term huanhyangyo eventually degenerated into huanyangnyeon, a promiscuous woman, a slut. The term is still used in Korean culture today as an insult. This legacy of trauma extended through centuries. When the Manchu invaded Joseon Korea in the 17th century, During the invasions of 1627 and 1636, hundreds of thousands of Koreans were taken as prisoners. Korean women fell into sexual slavery. When they returned home, they faced the same fate: abandonment, hatred, discrimination. The pattern repeated. Foreign power demands women. Women are taken. Women return changed. Society rejects them. Inside the Forbidden City, the selected women lived in carefully controlled conditions. Most women were employed as maids and servants, but the select group of concubines had a different role. Bear children, as many as the emperor could father. Those who gave birth to male offspring were elevated to imperial consorts. The empress held the highest rank. Ming dynasty concubine ranks from highest to lowest. Noble consort, pure consort, virtuous consort, beautiful companion, lady of bright deportment and lady of excellent deportment, lady of splendid deportment. Each rank had specific privileges, specific clothing allowances, specific quarters, specific access to the emperor. Concubines were required to bathe before the emperor visited. The court doctor examined them. The eunuchs escorted them to the emperor's chambers. In many cases, the concubines could not walk. Their feet had been bound. Foot binding was prominent during the Ming dynasty. The practice involved breaking the bones of young girls' feet and binding them tightly to keep them small. 3 inches was considered ideal. Women who could not run, could not walk without assistance, had to be carried naked to the emperor's bed. This was control, ensuring women could not escape, could not flee, could not resist. With hundreds or thousands of concubines at the emperor's disposal, jealousy was inevitable, competition was fierce, politics were deadly. During the reign of Emperor Chunghwa, who ruled from 1465 to 1487, Lady Wan was the favorite concubine. She was childless, obsessed with maintaining power. She murdered as many of the emperor's children as she could find, often killing the mothers as well. She killed Lady Jai, a consort who gave birth to Hongji. Lady Wan's attempt to prevent succession failed. Hongji survived. He became the 9th Ming emperor, and he saw the cruelty firsthand. He limited his philandering. He was never documented as being cruel to palace members. He was the exception. A strict astrological calendar governed imperial sexual activity. The emperor had to have sex with the right woman on the right day. This ensured lovemaking was in accordance with heaven's wishes. But it meant a particular concubine might not be called to the imperial bedchamber for many years. Some women spent entire lives in the palace without ever seeing the emperor. They filled their days applying makeup, sewing, practicing arts, socializing with other concubines, waiting. Always waiting for a summons that might never come. The Forbidden City itself reflected this system. 720,000 square meters, 980 buildings, protected by a 10-meter high wall, 3.2 kilometers long. 9 gates provided access. Beijing was enlarged specifically for the emperor's residence. The Grand Canal was deepened and widened so grain ships could reach the capital. No fewer than 24 emperors would reside in the Forbidden City, 14 from the Ming dynasty, 10 from the Qing dynasty. The last emperor was Puyi. He left the Forbidden City in 1924. Today, the Forbidden City is a museum. Over 10 million visitors per year. Tourists walk through the halls where concubines once lived. They see the thrones, the gardens, the ceremonial spaces. But they do not see the wells where women were buried. They do not see the rooms where massacres happened. They do not see the fear. The palace closes well before nightfall. Official reason? Preservation and security. Unofficial reason? The ghosts. Staff members report strange occurrences. Footsteps in empty halls. Voices with no source. Some visitors report feeling sad, a sense of great loss. A white lady with black hair appears in multiple accounts. She runs through corridors. A soldier chases her. She vanishes before reaching any exit. The practice of Shunzang continued after Yongle. His son, the Hongxi Emperor, reigned less than 1 year. 10 concubines died with him. Among them, noble consort Gongsu, consort Zhenjingjing, consort Gongjingchong, consort Ngongshishun, consort Huyanli, consort Zhenhuisu. Their names are recorded. Their ages are not. Until 1464. Emperor Yingzong lay dying. He had ruled twice, first from 1435 to 1449, then from 1457 to 1464. His first reign ended in disaster. 1449. The Battle of Tumu Fortress. The emperor personally led an army against Mongol forces. 500,000 Ming soldiers marched north. The Ming army was surrounded, attacked, destroyed. The emperor was captured. His brother, Zhu Qiyu, was installed as the Jingtai emperor. The captured emperor lived with the Mongols for a year, 1450. The Mongols released him, but his brother refused to restore his throne, placed him under house arrest for 7 years, 1457. The Jingtai emperor fell ill. The former emperor staged a palace coup, retook the throne, changed his reign name to Tianshun, obedience to heaven. He ruled for 7 more years, and on February 23rd, 1464, as he lay dying, he issued a decree. The practice of concubines being forced to die following the emperor's death was abolished. The decree, called the practice uncivilized. Contrary to Confucian principles, Emperor Yingzong died at age 37. No concubines died with him. His decree was honored, and from that point forward, no Ming emperor demanded zunzang. The practice ended after 40 years, after approximately 100 women killed. The decree saved countless future lives. The Qing dynasty, which conquered the Ming in 1644, maintained the concubine system. Emperor Shunji began excluding most Han Chinese from selection. He limited it to 8 Banners families. The Kangxi Emperor, who reigned from 1661 to 1722, expressly prohibited zunzang in 1673. His ministers advised him that the custom was cruel and unjust. He agreed. From that point, Qing emperors did not demand concubine sacrifices. The practice ended permanently. The practice of concubinage was finally outlawed in mainland China in 1949. When the Chinese Communist Party came to power in Hong Kong, it was outlawed in 1971, more than 5 centuries after Yongle's selection days. Today we visit the Ming tombs as tourists. We take photos at Changling. We walk the sacred way. We marvel at the engineering. But we should remember what lies beneath. In the eastern and western wells beside Changling, the women who died because an emperor demanded it. The women who feared selection days. Lady Kui left us her testimony. Other women left us nothing. Their names are lost. Their stories are erased. Their bones are dust. But they existed. They lived. They suffered. They died. And their deaths were not accidents. They were murders. Sanctioned by the state. Justified by custom. Enabled by a system that viewed women as objects. That is the truth of selection days under the Yongle Emperor. That is why palace women feared them. Being chosen meant entering a nightmare from which there was no escape. The only escape was death. And even death was not private, not peaceful, not chosen. Death came when the emperor commanded. That is what the forbidden city walls remember. The footsteps of girls who walked to the Shenwu gate. The voices of women who waited in the inner court. The silence of those who were buried in wells. The ghosts are there. They have never left. They cannot leave. Just like the women who entered the forbidden city could never leave. Trapped then, trapped now, forever.